Golf 0 Foxtrot Golf X-Ray Portable, listening through SW, G0FGX Portable, listening through SW for any call.
G0FGX from G1IR. How's that dog?
This is a story of GB3SW, a Tate 800 Series 2 2-meter repeater that sadly went QRT in May of 2024, but rose from the ashes after being replaced by a modern Yaesu DR2-XE dual-band repeater unit in early 2025. And how in just 7 short months, the QSOs, along with Fusion's C4 FM capability, were able to flow again with vastly improved reliability and coverage. A rejuvenated repeater group was set up to plan, construct and install a thoroughly re-engineered replacement for this long-established repeater, which has served Torbay, Sidmouth and eastwards along towards the Jurassic coast of Dorset for many years. The refurbishment project started with careful planning of the enclosure for the equipment and consideration as to where it would be located in the farm building. There was much drilling, grinding, fabricating and insulating required to make a tech-ready bespoke cabinet to house all the equipment. Much of the initial work took place at repeater keeper Jason Pigeon M1 ABB's work unit. 4 beer barrel style cavities were acquired, with careful tuning and setting up to maximise the isolation between the repeater's input and output frequencies. Jason and the team spent hours on installing the connecting coax cables and tweaking to the nth degree to optimise the cavity's efficiency. With the engineering work completed, the team relocated to the original repeater site, a busy dairy farm. This was during the month of December, so the guys worked in cold, wet and very muddy conditions. The first job was to run a brand new heavy-duty armoured cable from the consumer unit for the repeater's mains power. Being on an operational dairy farm, the original supply cable had been chewed and gnawed through by rodents. A reliable main supply is a top priority for any repeater, and on this site, as the cable runs next to a dry, fully stacked hay barn, electrical shorts are a particular hazard to avoid. Finally, the diamond collinear antenna was erected along with brand new helix coax and the fabricated cabinet installed and bonded to the metal of the barn structure. The team was then able to install the 4 cavities, ancillary devices, and of course the all-important Yaesu DR2 repeater for final testing, alignment and tweaks.
The 2 markers,
Yep.
So you've got, at the minute, we've got marker 1,
Yeah.
which if you look at the top there, it's
Okay.
145, 1125,
Okay.
and that's, at the top there, that's your, effectively your insertion loss across
Yep.
your cavity.
Yeah.
And you've got marker 2, which is down here, which is that one, and that's tuned to 145, 7125.
Okay.
And at the minute you can see it's just slightly off, because that's where we want the peak
Yeah.
of the trough to be, look.
Yeah.
And you can
To
see
find
where
the
the marker's sat,
Yeah.
so that one just needs tweaking a little bit.
Okay. To get the null right at the
At the
red-
minute, you can see where the marker is. We've got minus 30, nearly 39 dB
Yeah.
there. So we just need to just tweak the cavity
Okay.
to get
Find that null.
and that null, and we just check the pass,
Okay.
which is where that's where the cavity is letting the signal through, which
Okay.
is number 1, and that's where it's rejecting the signal there. So the first one is it looks like that one's where it needs to be,
Yeah.
but the second one we need to adjust.
Okay. And that's going to be done by adjusting the rod.
So we just adjust the rod, and we've got a little piston capacitor in there, which we just adjust the offset.
Okay.
In February of 2025, the GB3SW Repeater Group invited the TX Factor team to their East Devon dairy farm location to hear about the challenges they faced along the way.
Well, I'm intrigued to see what you've got in this barn, Jace. Is it a big combine harvester with a massive radio in it? Or?
No, nothing like that.
Oh, hang on. Ah, a cupboard full of beer barrels. That's good. It's going to be draft lager all round then, is it?
Wouldn't that be nice?
So this is the new home of the SW repeater, and up there is a brand new Yaesu Fusion repeater. It was 10 years ago that we last saw this repeater in our first episode of TX Factor. Here it is in its latest incarnation. So tell us a bit about the move. What did you have to do administratively in terms of moving it here? I know it's a bit easier now to apply for licenses and so on for repeaters. That process has been simplified. But what did you have to do in terms of transferring to a new repeater keeper and changing the location?
So what we did in this case is, because there was already a repeater here on site, all we did is essentially notify the ETCC that it was off air. We notified it off air, took the repeater off air, then we went through the process of building a new repeater, then we notified the ETCC when it was back on air, and we just had to tell them it was a digital repeater as well as an analog repeater. So it was very simple, very, very simple process indeed.
Well, like a lot of radio amateurs, I use repeaters all the time, but also like a lot of radio amateurs, don't really give much thought to what the technology is behind them that's making it all work. And looking into your cabinet there's a lot of stuff in there. So
That's
what
right,
are all the components that make up?
Okay, so you've got the cavity filters, which are the barrel-looking things on the top, the beer barrels. So they form the part of the repeater that forms the offset between the receive and the transmit. They form enough isolation so that you can use one antenna.
Because I suppose that's an issue with repeaters, proper repeaters that are in the same band. You're only 600 kcs away on receive from transmit, so you don't want to wipe out your own receiver.
That's right, absolutely, yeah. Without the cavities, you get a lot of descents between the receive and the transmit. And to use one coax and one antenna, you need a lot of filtering to do that. So we use a duplexer, and a duplexer is made up of cavities. And in the instance of SW, we're also using a circulator, which also helps with the isolation between the transmit and the receive. A
lot of work then to get it all tuned up. What sort of isolation are you getting on those cavities now between transmit and receive?
So on the setup that we've got here with the 4 beer barrels, we've got about 100 to 105 dB of isolation between the transmit and the receive. So with that kind of isolation, we're running about 20 watts out the back of the transmitter, which is giving us about 9 to 10 watts out of the aerial. With the gain on the aerial now, we're up to our permitted max ERP. So we're getting absolutely no descents at all on the receive with that setup.
So it was a complete re-engineering job, a complete new install, and one of the new things about it is the fact that you've got the new Yaesu Fusion repeater.
That's right. So with the existing repeater we had, we used a couple of the cavities that we had already on it, and what we found with the new kit is we actually needed a little bit more isolation between the transmitter and the receiver. The old tape setup before, we're not really sure whether we had a little bit of attenuation, a little bit of descents before with the previous setup, but we quickly found when we were doing some tests that we were getting some desensitization. So then we thought, well, we can't have that. So that's when we decided to add the extra cavities and work more on the duplexer side of it.
They look like beer barrels, but I'm guessing you didn't just half-inch those out of a pub yard somewhere.
Absolutely not. So they probably would have been originally made as beer barrels, but the company that originally manufactured was a company called Aerial Facilities Limited.
I see. So they're a communications company who've been repurposing these beer barrels for years.
Yeah. They're highly precision made. They're silver lined inside, and they're very, very well made.
Imagine then there's quite a lot of work in tuning and setting up the cavities. I mean, you can't just bring them up here and bung them in and see what happens.
The setup that we've got there is their pass reject setup. So we're using both coils in the cavities, and we phase them together. So they're doing two purposes. They're allowing one particular frequency to pass through, and they're also rejecting another frequency at the same time, which is the offset frequency. So they're doing two things the way they're set up.
So I'm guessing you didn't do all that setting up in the cabinet, you had them on the bench for a while.
So yeah, they're all built back at my workshop actually, and I've had to manufacture all the phasing cables and everything to create the duplexer in order for all this to work, and they've been set up on a spectrum analyzer, tuned off-site, and we've brought them on-site and we've tuned them again with the spectrum analyzer on-site, because they, transporting them and moving them up into the cabinet, they do kind of go offset.
And will you need to revisit them? Do they need sort of regular maintenance to keep them on tune?
They shouldn't do, to be honest. Once they're set up, they are kind of set, but they are temperature variant. They will move about a little bit in temperature. So it's something that we plan to do perhaps annually. It's just pop back and just put them on the analyzer and just make sure that they haven't gone out of set. And then we can make any tweaks that we need to do then.
So tell us about the repeater box in there, because it's the latest Yaesu repeater, I think?
So we're using the Yaesu DR2-XE, and that's a YSF Yaesu Fusion repeater that's capable of receiving analog and fusion signals at the same time.
How's that applied then for the users of SW? Do you have it as analog and fusion at the same time, or is it just analog or just digital? How does that work?
Yeah, so at the moment it's automatically receiving both at the same time. So if it detects just an analog signal, an FM analog signal, it just works as a standard analog repeater. But if it also detects a digital signal, a YSF Yaesu YSX signal, it will automatically click over to that function, and it will function as a digital repeater. So it's all automatically controlled by the Yaesu DR2 box.
And you can do all those adjustments with the repeater on site, you know, for setting everything up ready from the basics, for setting the frequencies and everything else. Is that all accessible just on the repeater box?
You can make all those adjustments. You can set it up just so it works just as an analog repeater. You can lock that in. So if it receives a digital signal, it will just reject it. You can set it up for an analog and a digital repeater, so it will just automatically switch over. Or you can set it up for a digital repeater only. It's all programmed on the settings, and it's quite easy to do actually.
So when it burbles up in its digital mode and you're driving along in your car and you've only got an FM rig, that could be pretty annoying, couldn't it?
So it's quite easy to overcome that. All you have to do on your receiver is set up so that you turn on the receive encode at 77 Hertz. Then what that will do, because the repeater is sending out a 77 Hertz CTCSS signal, it will only open the squelch up on your mobile set or your home base if it receives that CTCSS encoded signal. So it won't open it up on the normal squelch. So if you're getting the digital sound, when it's transmitting digital, the repeater, it doesn't send out the CTCSS, so the squelch doesn't open up.
That's genius. No, it makes absolute sense, because normally when you set yourself up for a repeater, you only put the tones on for transmit, don't you?
Yeah.
But if you put it on receive as well, that solves that problem.
That's right. You put it on the receive and the transmit, it's only going to open the squelch up if it's receiving an FM analog signal.
After going through the big process of building and commissioning this repeater, have you got any other tips for other would-be repeater builders, and things to think about while you're doing it?
Get the isolation right with the cavities. The duplexer is a very, very important part of the repeater. You really need to get that right. If you don't get the duplexer right, you get all sorts of issues with the interaction with the transmitter and the receiver. The aerial is another very important thing. We've experienced a few issues with the aerial on site. With a repeater, it energizes all sorts of metal objects in the area, and we were getting some initial crackling issues, etc. to start with. So it's been a real kind of eye-opener with micro crackles, etc. And we've had to do a lot of earthing on site to
and make sure nothing moves and that everything is
as
tightly connected together as possible.
Anything to do with the aerial, or even anything metal nearby, make sure it's tight, make sure it's earthed. It's been a real eye-opener, to be quite honest. Yeah.
Well, we've come up the ladder to this platform next to the cupboard here, this precarious perch, where we're going to have a closer look at the Yaesu DR2-XE repeater. And Jason's just going to run us through the adjustments you can make on the box, because it's everything you need, all in a box, ready to go, and you adjust it all from this screen at the front, Jason.
That's right, Bob. Yeah. So everything is adjustable on the touch screen. So as you can see, we've got A and B. A is what we're looking at the moment. A is the 2 meter side. B is the 70 side. So you can use the 70 sides for like remote access. So if you wanted to change some settings on the repeater remotely, say you had a bit of nuisance going on with 2 meters or something, and you needed to go in there and shut something down or change a setting, you can go in and set all the UHF side up with the remote commands on a certain frequency to send commands to the repeater.
So when you get into your setup then for A, which is your VHF repeater, what can you do?
So as you can see on the front, we were talking about it earlier, about it being an automatic repeater that does either digital or analog. You can see on the front here it's showing auto, so at the moment it's showing you that it's in automatic. We can change that quite easily on the front by just selecting whether it's digital or just standard FM. We can just fix those in position, so it can be one or the other. That can all be done on the front screen. And we've got other settings which we can go into, and we just press the setup button, which is that one. Straight away we can go in and see the frequencies. So you can set your uplink up, which is the frequency the repeater is receiving on. We've got the squelch setting on here, so we can move the squelch up and down to whatever setting we want. We've got it on the lowest because that works well for us. Go back into the setting again. We can go back into signaling. This is setting up the tone squelch settings on receive and transmit.
And a good point, because you were talking earlier on about using that on your FM rig to avoid hearing the digital burble when it comes up in digital mode, but you've got to remember then that the repeater's got to transmit that tone.
That's it, yes. For that to happen, it's very important that you set the CTCSS up on transmit and receive. It just saves that nuisance with users with the digital hash noise. We've got all the timers and everything in here, which is like your timeout timers, your squelch tails, because with the Yaesu Fusion they don't use pips or K-tones or anything between overs, but they have like a squelch tail that kicks the transmitter on for a couple of seconds afterwards. We've got it set on about 1.2 seconds, I think. We can set the deviation, we can set the ID announcements up, and that's how long, if you had like a voice board in here, you could announce voice IDs. We haven't fitted it to this particular one, but you can fit it as an optional extra, and it will announce voice IDs in predetermined times. And it also announces CW IDs. We've got it set at 15 minutes in line with the license requirements. And also this will be the call sign. If you go in on YSF, the Yaesu Fusion system, this is the call sign that you will see when you connect to the box through the repeater if you're using digital. And that's back to the main screen. Everything is programmable from that touch screen. It's very, very straightforward.
There we are then. So it really is a plug and play repeater solution, but you do need the other bits and bobs as well, like the cavities and everything else to make it work. But in terms of the logic and how you set it up and setting up your frequencies and everything, it is all in the box. Dom, you're the man that's got to make it all happen as far as the WiresX connectivity is concerned to the repeater. So that's what comes next. It's up and running on FM and also on digital. What is WiresX and why would you want to add that?
So the WiresX system is an internet-based room system where you can connect to different rooms, and it enables repeaters and people using hotspots or the HRI 200 systems to all connect centrally and talk amongst each other. There are multiple rooms, there are hundreds of rooms across different countries and different counties and such like, but it's a means of pulling all systems together within one space.
So you end up with a good local repeater,
Yep.
but also if you've got a radio that's suitable, you can then go into WiresX, get a list of rooms and that you could go off to and find other people on the other side of the planet to
Yeah,
talk
absolutely. So there are a number of different rooms which are available. So with the WiresX system, you can call up a list, you can search through the list, you can move it to a different room. Obviously you can disconnect the rooms if you want to run locally, but ultimately, yeah, it gives you greater flexibility.
To get here to this repeater site, we've gone to beyond and then gone round the back of it. So we're at a pretty remote place here, and I'm guessing to make this work, you need a good internet connection.
Absolutely. Problem being quite remote where we are, kind of in the middle of nowhere, is there's no fibre or landline based connectivity, so we have to set up a 4G connection. Obviously that comes with challenges itself. So we're going to put a 4G router in with a 4G SIM card, external 4G antenna, just to make sure we've got good coverage. But obviously once we've got that in order to get WiresX working, there are a few other technical things we need to do first.
Understand that for WiresX to work though, you need port forwarding.
Indeed, yeah. So with port forwarding is basically like we need to punch a hole in our firewall to let certain traffic come in on certain ports. Now with 4G and LTE, they use carrier grade network address translation, which means that we can't do that. So a way around it is to set up a VPN, so a virtual private network, which means we can tunnel that traffic back down the VPN tunnel to here.
You make that sound so straightforward.
Oh, it sounds simple.
But hopefully it's one of those things, isn't it? Port forwarding is always fun, even on your own router.
Oh, it is,
so.
absolutely. Port forwarding's fun, but plenty of years experience, and yeah. But obviously with the VPN side of things, you know, we'll have remote access for management. We can manage the router. We can also remote manage the computing hardware that's here as well.
So that's going to be great. And then once you've got your internet in here,
Yep.
that opens up the possibilities for possibly a sister repeater.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we take advantage of a location that's here. The coverage from this site is amazing, to be fair. And so with the internet connectivity, you know, and we've got the UHF available, so we could look to implement something like a DMR repeater that's internet connected, which could be used locally, and or use a room type system, a bit like WiresX.
And that's really making maximum use of what is a great repeater location here.
Absolutely. I mean, the coverage here on the SW site is far greater than what it used to be, and we best, you know, make the most of it and make use of this great location.
Well, look forward to those new functionalities being added, and
Absolutely.
good luck with your port forwarding.
Thank you very much.
GB3SW, a 2-meter repeater with a new lease of life thanks to a small team with a passion for getting things done with a high degree of enthusiasm and dedication. Since we filmed, the group has added the promised WiresX connectivity and GB7SX, a UHF repeater via free DMR.